Hey guys, and thank you for checking out today's episode of the Good Company podcast. On today's episode, we have Courtney Fricke, real estate investor, wholesaler, and local owner of a RIA down in the southeast New Orleans area. So we're really excited to have her on today, and I hope you like it. Thanks so much. All right, everybody, and welcome back to the Good Company podcast. Jack Ailing, First Equity Funding, Senior Loan Officer and host, along with my buddy here, my co-host, Ryan Comesso, also Senior Loan Officer with First Equity. We're joined today with one of Ryan's astute guests today, Courtney Fricke.
Courtney Fricke, yep. One of our best and greatest connections that we have in the New Orleans area, really throughout the entire southeastern portion of this country at this point. So, Courtney, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today.
Hey, you guys, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to it. So, one of the big things that we like to do, start off the podcast, is just get everybody kind of familiar with each other. I know you and Jack just met a few moments ago. So, just to kind of break the ice, we like to do just that, a little icebreaker question, and that's where we bring our boy behind the scenes there, James, involved. And James, take it away if you don't mind.
Alrighty, so here we go. We have quite an interesting one today, and we'll get it going. So, Courtney, we'll start with you. If you were to be reincarnated as an animal, which animal would you choose and why?
That's a good one. Tons of different things to choose, but I have had a lion in the back of my phone for a few years now. I'm a big fan of of just that strength and that confidence.
That mentality. Mm-hmm. Love that.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good one. You can tell. Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
I think I'd have to go with some type of bird, maybe top of the food chain bird. I think the travel becomes endless. You see everything from that view. I think it would be pretty sweet, especially if you're like a bald eagle and you do one of those kind of Alaska to through the East Coast or something like that, in terms of migration. That would be pretty sweet.
I agree. That's a good answer. Wow. Interesting. My first thing that came to mind was an elephant. I don't know why. I think they kind of people that know me might say, why is he going with that? Because he's not quiet at all. But I think the reverence that they get from just the surrounding, I always think of the Lion King and how when the elephants would walk through, everybody just steps back and they let them pass, and that's about it. Not that I see myself as any kind of royalty. That's just the first thing that kind of popped into my head. So we're going to go with that.
There you go.
All right.
And look, the bird can hang out on the back.
On brand, that answer.
We broke the ice on that one for sure. Yeah. So, Court, like I said, thank you so much again. I know how busy you are and everything that you have your hands in and going through. So thank you again for taking the time with us today. Start from the beginning, if you don't mind. I mean, because really, as we like to say, it's really not about us. It's not about First Equity. It's all about you, your experience, and how you've gotten to where you are, and what real estate, specifically investment, has done for you. But I know how many other facets of real estate you're involved in. If you don't mind, take us back to the beginning. How did you first get involved in real estate, and was there a particular person or event that happened? What kind of sparked that interest for you?
Sure thing. So funny that you bring up elephants. I actually lived overseas in Thailand for a year. And in 2013, so we're almost 10 years, into how long ago that was. But and elephants are everywhere there. I get back into the States, 2014. I mean, I don't have credit established at all. I had gotten 2 part-time jobs with a friend, and honestly, like I was trying to get my stuff back from Thailand. I am trying to reorient myself. And while I was at those 2 part-time jobs, someone like recommended that I take the job they were leaving. They're like, hey, this was the other part-time manager that I was working with. They're like, hey, you'd be a good fit. And that was a W-2 job in the real estate industry as a property manager. And I like to say it was like baptism by fire. It's like I adopted a mute child, because literally on day one that I was hired, I managed a 100-unit marina that was owned by an apartment complex. And literally day one, I took the job as an assistant manager, and the manager had cancer, and day one he died in ICU. Like literally HR was there from California. They were walking me through like the paperwork. And so it's like it was an apartment complex corporation that owned 1 marina. And so the guy was like, well, he was supposed to train you, so figure it out. So yeah, so it was fun. So that was a W-2 job, but I got very immersed very quickly, obviously, where it was 40% occupied and a 1-star review on the sites that matter in the boating world. So my regional managers come in and they would like, look through my leases, and they couldn't really fully audit me because it was just so different from their apartment complexes. But I had 2 tenants while there who were my mentors. So I had that job about 4 years, and I kind of just took, my approach to life is I just want to leave it better than I found it. Right. And so every day I'm going in and just trying to figure it out, reading all the files in the office, asking all the vendors who, we had all their contact info, be like, hey, what are the jobs you've done here in the past? Tell me what you know. But I had 2 tenants there specifically that really mentored me. One of them was taught me a lot about business. He had just retired at 50 years old, bought a $200,000 sailboat at the marina and started living on it. So he was hanging out. He had just retired from BP Oil, and he was one of their acquisition managers who would acquire assets for them. So he taught me how to value businesses, and we actually made an offer in the marina together at one point. Thankfully, it didn't go through. Life would look a lot differently if it did. But he taught me a ton about finances and businesses and everything like that. Because during that time, I'm just improving it. But I took the marina from 40% occupied to 100% occupied within 2 years, with like really no oversight, because they didn't know how to like oversee me. It was the variation from their normal, which was apartment complexes. Like, I literally was like, how do you evict a boat? They're like, we don't know. Go find out.
Right.
So from 40% occupied to 100% occupied, and then from a 1-star review to 5-star reviews on all the sites that matter. I even added additional slips and did some value add. And so he was like, hey, Courtney, you don't understand what you just did from a business perspective, right? And then the second mentor, this guy, in the boating world, when you go to sell a boat, the joke is like, is this the second best day of your life? The first is when you bought it. The second is when you sell it. Because he had moved a 50-foot power yacht into one of the slips because we had easy access to the lake, and he was like, wanting to put it there so he could show it to sell it easier. And I'm like, hey, is it the second best day of your life? He said, no, I just put a 70-footer behind my house. And long story short, I said, do you mind if I ask what you do? And he said, I'm a landlord. And he had over 40 rental properties, and he would leave me books left and right. So it was during that time that I bought my very first property. It was a short sale where we had to go to the bank and get a discount. But long story short, those 2 mentors, they were teaching me as I was trying to find my next step forward, like the next right step for me. And so it was like an immersion into the real estate industry in some ways, but and by necessity, I learned a lot. But yeah, that's how I got started.
Wow. Yeah, you learned a lot whether you wanted to or not.
Sink or swim. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I guess coming back, just for a quick question, I mean, just coming back from, where are you from originally that, I guess, got you out to Thailand and now is coming back to New Orleans? And now is that marina in the New Orleans area? And is that, where you called home prior?
Yeah.
Or?
So I was born and raised in the suburbs of New Orleans, so in the North Shore area, and this marina was there. So I had come back home.
Okay. Wonderful. That's amazing. That's a great story. And I mean, I have just some, my cousin, his sister-in-law is, she's been in Thailand the last 5 years, coming back every couple summers and whatnot. Absolutely love it. Nothing but good things to say.
I love it.
So it's definitely, so one of those things that if you, want to take a jump and make that, decision, it seems that seems to be a landing spot for those kind of people as well. So that's awesome. And I commend you just for, having the guts to take that jump where, I'm sure out of, a lot of these guys in the room, except for really Ryan, traveling is kind of not on the top of the list. So, I think that's definitely something you have to have, in you to want to go and do. And it's so awesome. And I think it's amazing.
Thank you.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Like, so to that point, like, it seems like you never really, or not that you never thought about it, but prior to going to Thailand, or I guess really prior to even maybe having that experience with your friend when you came home, did you see, like, it doesn't seem like you saw yourself in real estate at all. Did you have another direction or anything in particular that you ever wanted to, like, really do and focus on, or just kind of
I didn't see myself.
Let it happen
I didn't see myself in real estate. Real estate has always been a means to the end, right? It's a commodity. If, this AirPod case could make me the money, the cash flow, the passive, the tax benefits that real estate could, I mean, I'd be in this business. But the reality is, so I actually played basketball for a long time, and I wanted to be a college basketball coach. And so,
Cool.
And even when I was in Thailand, I was doing volunteer work where I did a lot of
Very cool.
teaching, coaching, things like that. So I've always kind of had the heart for stuff like that. So no, real estate was not the plan, but I knew when I was at the marina, I was having, I don't want to say a quarter life crisis, but probably, where, I actually came back from Thailand. They were having a day coup there. So literally all my stuff, almost all my earthly possessions are still stuck over there. It took me a year and a half to get it home. I was actually home on vacation. I was supposed to be going back. That ended up never happening. So I'm having this crisis, and I was like, well, obviously I'm going to be staying here. Let me start, kind of getting rooted. And I started realizing, well, what am I going to do? And I did not go to college, and I did not want to climb the corporate ladder. Like, they wanted me to climb the corporate ladder at that apartment complex corporation. They're like, we'd love to have you at other assets, this, that, and the other. But I didn't want to do that. I've always kind of been entrepreneurial. And so I was like, what does that look like? And so I started studying wealth, which is why when that guy walked in, I said, do you mind if I ask what you do for a living? To have, put a 50-footer in and you've 70-footer right behind your house. And the guy looked like an average Joe guy. I was like, excuse me, what do you do? Right. But I started studying wealth, and I knew that I couldn't depend. Obviously I'm not getting a pension because I wasn't working for someone, going to go climb some corporate ladder and work for someone forever. Those don't really obviously exist in a lot of realms, anymore. Yeah. But then the second part was, I was like, I didn't feel like I could trust Social Security being there when I was old enough. So I was just starting to say, because I saw a lot of people at the marina struggling in their older age. So ultimately, at the end of the day, I said, I want to figure out something where I can get more in control. And when I started studying it, real estate historically has been a major wealth builder.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
So you get to that point, you're home after, you're dealing with a year long of trying to get your stuff back. You're building this education, hands-on, both as a property manager and while, receiving this mentorship from these, two gentlemen. And now it's time that next step, right? So it's those 4 years, you're kind of moving, you've gotten that property. Kind of take us through that transition from the marina now to, okay, I've got my hands on my first property, maybe my second one or third one at that time towards the end, kind of how did that catapult, getting that first one under your belt? Because we talk about it all the time, getting that first one under your belt is so important. The difference between getting none and one, as much as it sounds in every other facet of life, it's like, oh, I just need one. But really going through the motions of finding that property, getting a GC, closing on the deal, rehabbing it, flipping it, or holding it, whatever the case may be, so big, especially to us as lenders, just as investors. Just kind of take us through that next step as you were kind of moving through, okay, this is what I want to do. I'm reading these books. Education is up. I feel like I'm ready. What got us to this next step now?
Sure. So that first deal was a live-in flip, which I think is awesome for a lot of people because they can then take the real estate you're currently, like life demands of you to have, right, where you live, and make something of it. So I bought, a fixer-upper was living it, fixing up. And then I got a line of credit against it. And so I was using that line of credit to buy other properties. I remember when I quit the marina, within 2 weeks, I bought a new vehicle, and then I bought my second property. And so I was all in.
Yeah.
But those I got in the industry in 2014. That very first deal I bought between 2015 into the beginning of 2016. But in 2017, I bought my second property then. So it was very slow, right? But in 2018, I think I bought like a dozen or something like that. Like, I don't know, like there was a big jump. You're right. That confidence building of like, first of all, going through the motion and realizing the world doesn't like crumble in whenever you figure things out along the way. And I really just tied myself to some people who were further along on the journey and just said, hey, can I soundboard some of these deals on you? And I started finding different communities in the area that I could say, I just want to go talk shop with other people who are doing this, right? I got on the Bigger Pocket forums, and I remember going to like a pub with like 10 people from one of the Bigger Pockets forums, and we're like, we couldn't hear each other, but we're just trying to talk shop. And that was all really encouraging for me, right? That there's other people trying to do this exact same thing. And so, but as I started doing that, I started off flipping, added in some wholesaling, and I started then to kind of get traction. So that's really how it started to take off. Now I'm doing real estate full time. Obviously, it's now putting food on the table, So not only was I doing it because I loved it, but I was doing it, out of necessity too at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
And did you feel like being at home and having somewhat of a network already around you, did that, yes, you're doing the Bigger Pockets and all that kind of stuff, but did you feel like you already had a leg up on some people because of the area that you were working in and maybe knowing some people, already ahead of time? I mean, because we have some young guys in the room that just started about, call it 6-8 months ago. They're on the grind right now of that, Bigger Pockets, the meetups, the networking events where you're, in some Elks Lodge with, 8 to 10 people and you're not sure who's the real players in the game, if anybody is at all. How much did you have to kind of trial and error through that process to, and who did you lean on, did you feel like the most as you were kind of coming up through that process?
So I don't think there's very few relationships other than maybe family, but even then this could be challenged. No relationships come by default. They have to, by design, be built. So even those two guys at the marina, this guy could have come in, rented that slip, and I could have never built a relationship with, but I said, hey, do you mind if do you have a few minutes? Can I sit and ask you some questions? Or, man, are there any books that you have? And he'd start leaving, right? So it takes effort. And there were I literally started asking everyone in my network, who do you know that is a real estate investor? And there was one lady that I remember when I was a teenager and I went to church that my parents knew, like 15 years ago. Like I didn't even know she lived in the area still, type of thing. And so eventually I contacted her and went and I treated her to lunch, right? Things like that. So none of it was really kind of built in. I was constantly seeking. And I think my mindset going into that was, hey, I don't feel like I have anything to bring to the table. I don't care. I'll at least carry the water to the table or whatever, just to get around people who were doing it. Right. So I was like, look, I will come sweep. I will come rake at your projects. Can I just ask? Yeah, I will buy you lunch, like whatever. what can I do? And I think that they really, the handful of them, they responded to that. And also that I was willing to take action on what they were telling me, because they were like, I felt like they were surprised when I'd come back, like, yeah, I did. I read the book you gave me, or I did this or that. And I did go find the communities, like the investor meetups in my area. They weren't always what I hoped they would be, but I took them for what they were, and I was just still trying to glean, not throw the baby out with the bathwater type of thing.
Good information.
Right.
Yeah, for
Right.
sure. I mean, that seems, you mentioned a few things over the last few minutes that tie in with just us philosophically, but a few other things and characteristics that other people that we've had on the show have mentioned. The first one was, obviously the entrepreneurial spirit. That's clear. And you just said it yourself too, putting yourself out there. I mean, that was the most recent thing you were talking about. I think that's huge. You have to do it, and not just put yourself out there and that, because that is such a big step, but also you hit the nail on the head with, you have to take that action. You have to not just take it for what it is and say, hey, this happened for them, they told me what's the right thing to do, it's now just going to happen for me. You have to do that for yourself as well. And then the last thing that I thought was interesting, and not surprising in any way, was the athletic side of things. I think it's very interesting to me how many people we, at least in the short existence of the show, have had that competitive athletic side of them. Obviously the entrepreneurial stuff, that kind of stands out. How did those things, do those things are they still a factor for you? Like, obviously the entrepreneurial stuff, putting yourself out there, like, I thought it was interesting about the athletic side of things. Like, are you still involved in basketball? Do you still see yourself coaching at any point? Or?
I mean, I've coached little, like my nephew and stuff like that. Like, I'll kind of coach any of that stuff. My nephew just got a goal, and he's 7. So like, I'm like, oh, you're going to be so surprised. I may still have some game. We'll see if I still have it. Right. But no, I think the part with sports was, we understand that repetitions, like, you don't just show up to game day and hit those threes or your free throws or run plays flawlessly. It's those repetitions. And so I think a lot of people don't see the behind the scenes. Like, they only really give tickets to the game. They don't give it to practice, right? Don't get me wrong, there's some things, but like, the reality is, a lot of people, they see where I'm at now in real estate, but they don't realize all the repetitions that we'll put in up front. And I'm thankful for sports for that stuff, right? One of the guys I really love following on social media yesterday posted, he said something to the effect of, it's basically those who can keep doing without seeing the fruit of their doing who will win in the long run. Because don't get me wrong, we want that fruit, and you want to make sure it's the right actions, but I mean, you just got to put in work, right? You're underwriting deals left and right, and you're like, I haven't gotten a deal. Like, okay, well, what if that deal came on your 100th deal that you underwrote, right? Like, do you have the staying power? A lot of people, I think, they think of this as get rich quick, but the reality is half of the secret sauce in my life has just been staying power, just being able to go in and hit those repetitions, and knowing that is muscle memory, knowing that is sowing seeds for future harvests.
That's very pertinent to some conversations we've been having recently, huh?
Yeah, and it sparks just the next question, and it kind of brings it into the fold of like kind of how things are turning in today's society, and just, attention span, and we spoke before the show started on retention and all that kind of stuff. And you're somebody who's well into their career and highly successful and younger, in terms of the generations of, maybe when people think landlords, it may be this gray-haired old person in the, above, that lives above their apartment, whatever the case may be. I feel like, and I can, obviously we just met, but I can feel it from you. There's a certain sense of pride, right? You've worked to get to this point, and you've had these steps, like you said, didn't go to college. Me either. We've taken these steps to better our lives up to a certain point, whether we're at the point we want to be or there's still, way more to go. How do you see the next generation coming up affecting the real estate market in the working aspect of it, where it comes the investors, the realtors, the mortgage, loan originators, that grind essence of the business Do you think it's got staying power with the people that are, with the generations that are going to be coming behind us? And how do you think that'll affect the real estate market overall?
So I'm in my 30s. So something that I found that I've really been attracted to. So there is, my father is a self-made millionaire. You'd never know. Every time we have a hurricane down here in Louisiana, we tell him to go get the money out of the walls or the ground where he dug it up or whatever, right? We don't know where it is, but we're like, we know you got it somewhere. We're like, go get it before this, hurricane passes through. The other day I did some manual labor with him and I could not keep up. He's in his 60s. I was like, holy crap, I couldn't keep up. But so I always joke that I don't have a lazy bone in my body because of him, right? And we all know that they don't make people like that as much, anymore, right? Here is the reality, though. I am thankful for what my father has taught me, and we've had many conversations about this, but I don't want to pay the same price that he paid. So then the question becomes, and I think that's pretty prevalent among the millennials and the Gen Zs, they don't.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Right, like they don't want to go slave away for 60 years. That's why the financial independence, retire early community is on fire, right?
Right.
Like it's because people say like I want to enjoy life now. I don't want to do it maybe when I'm 60, and can my body handle it then, right? So there is a part here where yes, hustle and grind. The question becomes, do they have the staying power to grind and hustle for like a season? And I know with me, it's the kind of model I'm going after is I hustle and grind for a season, but then I retire, where I'm still working, but it's not. And honestly, that'll be in my mid 30s, like where I'll be able to pick and choose the deals that I do and, whatnot. So in the industry, how do we see that? We see people. Yes, I think people are addicted to the grind and it's that, hustle culture. But I also see people who are like left and right. People are talking about scaling, right? Like outsourcing things, hiring people, because what do they want? They want to buy back their time so that they can have that the freedom of time, right? The true freedom is not the stuff, right? You're never going to see me drive a Lamborghini. But the reality is so I've lived frugally, or, I've put in those long hours because, wanting to not, have to trade my time for active income, which is the most difficult to earn because it requires my labor, but also it's the most heavily taxed, right? So at the end of the day, I see, number one, a lot of people in the industry, they're huge on the scaling part. Right? How can I outsource? How can I build systems? This, that, and the other. Trying to get back some of their time, because I think it's a pretty prevalent concept of, time being the most finite resource that we have. How can we, how can we have success, but also be cognizant of that?
Keep our time.
Yeah, and so that's
and I think. Yeah, and I think that hits the nail on the head. And I say that question as a person who, like yourself, plugged in, you're on these Facebook groups, you're on these meetups, you're on these things. And I think the people that are the loudest saying how lazy millennials are, or however, aren't really seeing all the way down to the root of it. Like you just said, I think, just under 30, but, I think that we saw our family, our parents struggle to a certain degree. And now we're being awarded, because of that hard work, we're awarded certain freedoms. And I think we're just trying to now pass that same thing along. And I just don't think that means necessarily laziness, but it might just be doing things a better way, as time always comes on. There's always ways to improve on the model. And I just think that, these younger generations are finding ways to do it faster, do it more efficient, and do it on a larger scale. Like you said, if you're in these Facebook groups, you're seeing these, I'm seeing these 17-year-old, 18-year-old kids, just constantly asking questions, like you said, to these older people that have been in the business for 25, 30 years. And I'm seeing it directly with kids, with people in our office, on these groups, on these meetups. The next generation coming up is hungry and they want their money. And it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out and how, whether we all, whether all the generations come together,
Yeah.
we're with us kind of being in the middle of the two, but
Yeah.
I just think that it's going to be really interesting to see over the next 10 years or so, kind of how that flushes itself out.
Absolutely. And keep in mind that we all see through the lens of our own what we value, but also how we define things. So like I have in the middle of my vision board my definition of success, which is success to me, which we all need to find it, right? Because we have different value systems and whatnot. But success to me is when my family sees me more than my team or, my laptop, my work. But so they're seeing me more. So I don't want to spend 12 hours with my laptop or with the team and then 1 hour with family, right? So I want there to be where that is definitely flopped. But my net worth still grows. For me, that is success, where I can spend more. I have that lifestyle part. I can spend more with family, and then I can still, financially have those metrics growing, cash flow, net worth, things like that. But here's the thing is that may not be the lens in which the older generation defines success. Maybe it's, how calloused are your hands, or, how long did you work today, or did you sweat today, at work type of thing. You never know.
Right.
True. No, that's a fair point. And, just to, I guess, bring it around for the audience, I mean, obviously I'm very familiar with the rock star that you are. And I just, talk outside of investing, like what other areas of real estate you mentioned, you alluded to, wholesaling a little bit. What other things are you involved in? Obviously, and just for the audience members that are not familiar with Courtney, she does run one of the bigger area, RIAs, I should say, rather, in the New Orleans area. But it's beyond just New Orleans. It's obviously out into the North Shore that you mentioned earlier, into Baton Rouge, and then out, obviously, into the Gulf Coast. So talk to us a little bit about that. Like, besides investing itself and getting into the nitty-gritty of your deals, and your flips and things like that, like, what else do you do?
So I started off flipping, I added in wholesaling. And then when I realized that was a day job, I wanted to add wealth. I started buying rental properties. So I have a portfolio in Louisiana, and then I have a portfolio in Mississippi on the Gulf Coast. And I've bought a ton of that stuff. A lot of it's been through creative financing. I'm very much see myself as a creative real estate investor. So I've done a ton of different types of deals. I've bought and sold creatively. I've flipped. I've wholesaled. I've done stuff with a lot of different asset classes. So everything from low end to high end, single family, small and large multifamily, mobile homes. I own some mobile home parks. I've done stuff with small lots, large land developments like subdivisions. I've done a lot of different things. And at the end of the day, I really enjoy playing chess with real estate. Like so right now I have one of my properties that I'm selling and it's fully gutted and I just don't want to rehab it because I made my money by solving some title issues with it. And now that it's time just to rehab it, I'm like, I'm so bored. So I was like listed at that point. So I really enjoy deal structuring, raising money, finding deals and stuff like that. So I do run a RIA, a Real Estate Investor Association. That is one of the biggest things I recommend people to get involved with in their local area. Critical when I didn't find one that I really enjoyed in my area. I started one in 2018. And so we've had a few thousand people come through the doors of those events over the years. And so I always really enjoy that. I also have the privilege of being on the radio every weekend. Most major metro markets have a home improvement show. So a few years ago, I got invited to be on that. And y'all, it keeps me on my toes. It's on Saturdays from 11 to 1, and it's call-in, like a live call-in show. And so I never know. So my co-host is the building science contractor, the building science expert contractor. He answers all the home improvement DIY stuff. And then I answer all the real estate stuff, everything from buying, selling, investing, renting, and then all the complex stuffs that can kind of ravel off from there. And that reaches from the Louisiana all the way to the Florida Panhandle. So we have a pretty wide reach as far as AM goes. And then it's also online, but, and I have a few other things, like I do write articles for a magazine called Real Producers, New Orleans Real Producers, which is a magazine that goes to the top 500 producing agents in our region in the New Orleans area, and I write an article every month, for them on real estate investing or solving messy real estate problems. So I do a ton of training for brokerages. I can tell you right now that's actually ramping up. So those are some of the things that I do. At the end of the day, I've done a lot of different strategies, but I'm starting to be more selective with the deals that I do, and doing better quality deals. But I'm doing a ton of buy and hold these days. So probably about 80% of the deals I do every year are buy and hold now.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier some of the, just the zaniness that goes on kind of with these fix and flips. Like you mentioned, you buy some, it has a ton of, title issues, you clear that, you wind up making what you wanted to make maybe on the flip. You say, all right, I'll take this away. I'll sell this. What's kind of the craziest thing you've ever, either walked in on in a house or, maybe halfway through a flip? Like we were kind of discussing in our pre-show meeting yesterday, like, I'm a brand new flipper, think about it, and then I just walked into my tile floor in the kitchen that I just did carrying a can of paint. I trip and fall over a hammer and now it's all over the ground on my brand new tile floor. Those are some of the tribulations that you're going to run into as you're kind of going through this business and growing and all that stuff. What were kind of some of your growing pains as you are, work through those flips and some of those, even maybe not flips, just early real estate deals like burns and maybe some, cash that went, to the wayside? What are some horror stories, if you will?
So I kid you not, I'm not very techie, but I've had a few people be like, we need you to start telling your stories. So I'm starting to do stuff on TikTok where I'm telling my crazy real estate stories. Just recently, we did a property in New Orleans, and the contractors texted us and were like, hey, this one was at Steve Keegre, Aussie Steve. And Steve texted me, he's like, Courtney, you'll never guess what the guys just found. It was a plastic container with a bag inside full of ashes, but it had no name on it. And it was a multiple generation inherited property. Tenants had been there for at least a dozen years or something like that. They had no idea whose it was. And so no one claimed it. So I was like, I can't just throw this away. So I remember Steve put it in the console of his truck, brought it to me because I found we found the crematorium that did it. And I was like, will you please take this? They're like, yeah, we'll try to find the next of kin, or we'll safely, dispose of it or store it or whatever. But I wasn't able to get to them for 2 days. So for 2 days, it was strapped into the front of my front seat of my truck. And I had no idea. Was it a male, female, child, adult, murderer, good person? I don't know. And so I kept calling it Buddy Pal in my front seat. And I was like, Buddy, I'm really sorry to be rude, but you're not coming in my house. I just don't know who you are. So for 2 days, I run around with that. I go bring it to the funeral home that did the crematorium. I kid you not, 2 weeks later, Steve calls me. He's like, oh my God, we found a second one. And but this one actually was in a box and had a name on it. That was Marla. So for 2 days, she was in the back of my truck, while I got to the same thing. But at the end of the day, things like that happen. I have dealt with a ton of squatters. I actually now carry because one of the most recent situations, I bought 30-something properties, and they were mostly vacant. And so and some of it was a mobile home park. And so I was going in, this was Christmas. The Christmas Eve, I got a phone call that there were squatters that had broken into the property. So we called the police, they went, they couldn't find them. So the day after Christmas, so this is this past Christmas in 2021, the day after Christmas, I go out there. Because I'm like, how'd they get in? We had them board up every window while we're getting ready to do renovations. I'm like, how did they get in? I'm so mad. So I go around the back and I see that there was a baby stroller against the back of the trailer. And they had climbed up, pushed in one of the window units and climbed in through that small opening. And they were inside a screwed in trailer, doors, everything were screwed in. And they were ingressing and egressing through this baby stroller, window. So I go and I start banging and I'm like, hey, I'm going to open up the door. If you're in there, you need to get the heck out. Sorry. And so I'm banging on there and I get my drill gun out. I open up the door and I'm like, you know what? Maybe they're not in there. So And so again, I'm yelling, saying, hey, get out if you're in there, hitting on everything, making a ton of noise. So I go in there and I grab some lumber and I go to put like an X over the back window. And as I'm doing that, I hear the door open behind me. It was a closet door. And I turn around and this guy was like looking at me, and he had just come. I was in a bedroom. He was in the closet. I didn't go look in the closet like a dummy. And so I was like, you need to get out of here right now. And he was on something. So I've had a few situations like that. To the degree that I hired, we have some Navy SEALs that train near the New Orleans region. And I knew recently retired one. And so I looked at my CPA. I said, can I hire him to train me? And sure enough, we went. So, I mean, you're going to come across stuff like that all the time. And so that is, I get the discounts that I get the discounts on these deals, these fantastic deals by solving problems. But a lot of times that attracts people whose backs are against the wall, whether it is vacant and you have squatters, right? Or, the owner is facing foreclosure or whatever. So, I've had a gun pulled me on a few times and a few different things like that. But those are more extreme. I mean, obviously found the ashes. If you haven't been in real estate long enough, you haven't found ashes. I found a tombstone. I thought the tombstone, it was the ex-husband's name, and he was buried underneath the trailer on the property. And I called the woman. I was like, please tell me he's not buried underneath this house. But he wasn't. And, just stuff like that. All the raunchy, crazy things too. So at the end of the day, I just haven't found $50,000 in cash yet.
Waiting for that one.
Yeah. Tupperware of cash.
A few hundred deals in. So I'm like, law of averages. Maybe it's because I don't like rehabbing that I don't find it. Maybe that's what it, after doing, 100 rehabs, I'm like, I'm done. So now I'm lazy with it. And I'm like, maybe that's why I don't find it, because I don't dig deep enough in the house.
And I'm like a stupid northerner. I'm thinking like finding ashes in a wall in a house in New Orleans. I'm immediately thinking spirits. Like immediately thinking haunted. Yep. Like immediately thinking like worst case scenario. I would have immediately out of my out of attorney review. I'm backing out. Get me out.
So I had multiple closings. So I had multiple closings while I had Buddy Pal in the truck, right? And I was like, they're always like, Courtney, what crazy deal? Because I do deal in a lot of crazy deals. So I'll do the ones where you can't find the heirs, crazy title issues. You got to buy it in 2 days because it's a foreclosure, whatever, right? Always into something. And so I was like, you're never going to guess what I have in my truck. They're like, the whole office is spitting off guesses. And sure enough, I went and walked the attorney out there. They're like, no freaking way. Yeah. So, yeah.
I'm sure of that. That's awesome. I appreciate that. That's awesome. You should do a separate show just on clips. That TikTok's a great start to get that out there. That's a great idea. I'm sure. So just with respect to the RIA, I mean, how is it that because I know you do a lot of different things and things that even other real estate investor groups, your associations may not do. One of which I thought was extremely interesting was, and I'll let you, kind of introduce it, but the kind of the game show night, and I know you've done, different types of meetups specific for deals, so all that stuff is pretty cool too. How do you try and stay on top of that? And then with this volatility, have you seen either an uptick of attendance or a downtick in attendance?
Yeah. So right now we have 4 meetings a month. Pre-COVID, we only had 2, maybe an occasional third networking night. So we've got our main meeting, which is our normal speaker up front networking night. We added to that one, which this one's been a game changer. We added to that what's called the meeting after the meeting, where we'll have a 2-hour meeting, but then everyone usually stays in the lobby or goes out in the parking lot, right? And so what we do is we literally just go to a restaurant bar down the shop and we down the way and we shop for a good while, sometimes till midnight. And so that's actually been really great because it's intimate. People are getting to know each other outside of the awkward, here's my business card, take my, so then we also, in the other one, we have a lunch and learn that's 101. But the one you were referencing, we played the cash flow. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the book, has a game called Cash Flow. And so we started playing that. Now we play it every other month. And the months that we don't, we just have like a round table mastermind. So, and then
Very cool.
we do have the fourth meeting is what's called an exchange meeting, which is a deal-based meeting. So literally, if you're looking for funding, so Ryan gets a shout out at those meetings. He's attended them. And then if you've got a deal, if you're looking to sell like a note, or one of my, oh, look, I did the exchange meeting last Friday. We have it once a month, and we actually use stuff. So this is actually an old school method. I actually have this here in the office. So from a deal, I got 40,000 baseball sports cards, and this is the smallest box by far. So the idea of an exchange meeting is where cash isn't your only currency. So like, it might be a promise, so like a loan. It might be, let me trade these 40,000 baseball cards for 20% ownership of a deal, or for that $10,000 land note that you have that you don't want anymore. It's the idea that you're taking something that you want less to get something that you want more. It's an old school method. I'm a big fan of learning from the old school creative real estate guys. Like that is like actually a huge thing that I do is I learn from those guys. And this the concept of exchanging is decades old. So that's actually my favorite meeting that we used.
That's really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of have you mention that just because I think it is truly unique, and we don't hear about a lot of those types. So obviously you have, like you mentioned, the one a month where you get somebody like yourself or a Bob Norton or Steve Curie or Dominique. I know there's been endless gurus in their respective areas that you guys have had involved with the RIA, but just I thought that was really interesting and a huge value add for people that might not have that open mind to do stuff like that. So,
sure. I mean,
and I think it's attractive, right? I think it's super attractive to I these guys and us in the beginning of our careers, and still at this point, you're going to these networking events, and no matter what they are, in New Jersey, for whatever reason, they're all going to be the same. It's that, going into some type of bar or some type of restaurant, you're standing around with 15 other people. Maybe they have a credit guy, maybe they have a title guy and a realtor that's running the whole thing. And, they each talk for 15 minutes. It's 30 minutes of networking, and then everybody leaves on their own, But I think what, you do and what, obviously watching some of the stuff that, Ryan's done down there and with you specifically, I think what you're doing is really creating an environment you're creating an environment, right? You're come to this meetup and you're going to get 4 different experiences throughout an entire month. I'm filling your schedule for an entire month on 4 separate experiences. Whether you come to all 4, that's up to you. But I'm giving you 4 opportunities a month to change your life or just change your path, right? And maybe not necessarily change your life on one night, but all of a sudden maybe you don't usually go to the meeting after the meeting, and today it's at your favorite bar, so you're going to go, and now you meet that perfect person. That value add, and that's something that we're talking about, amongst ourselves in these turbulent times. It's like, yeah, maybe not everybody's looking for that, 7% rate or that loan that you're trying to sell, but how else can you help your borrowers or your new prospective borrowers? And you're doing that, across the board and helping, not just, loan originators like Ryan and giving them the platform, but, also investors and all those people to get together. And I think creating an environment to do that is super unique and really awesome. And that's kind of, why you're sitting on the other side of the camera here and being that, we're just meeting here, but, Ryan's talked up you up immensely and it's been really exciting to have you here and let you share your story, because I think it's incredible.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
And just to kind of finish that off, I mean, to you, as you mentioned, Courtney, I think it might have been like the first meeting before the meeting that was when I actually met Steve in person, and we hadn't met in person at that point, but it was last October when I had finally gotten down to meet a few people in person, and the normal meetup spot was a hotel, wasn't available, so we were on the West Bank. I forget the name of the place, but it was a nice little place right on the river there.
River
Shack. It might have been called or something. Yeah, exactly. And to that, it was where I got to meet Bob Norton for the first time. I got to meet and had dealt with Steve a lot, and spoken with Steve a lot, but had never gotten to see him in person. And that is big for me. I know it's big for you. I know, but just on obviously a bigger picture, the one thing that I do say all the time to new people that I speak with, to, you know, people that I've spoken with in the past and worked with in the past in the area, I do think, and I think you have a big part of it, is the network and the people down there, and just the overall mentality of working together is very different. It's much more collaborative than any other network. That, I'm not saying it doesn't exist in other networks. I'm just saying it's outwardly presented in not only in the New Orleans area, in the North Shore area, Slidell, West Bank, all of that. And I think that's a big testament to obviously yourself, but the team as well that you guys have down there, and you know, including I said Emil. How could I forget Emil? You know, who runs the West Bank Rio with Steve, and you know, so I just am super thankful to have met everyone down there, but also on, you know, beyond the business dealings and all that. It's very nice, you know, to be able to know confidently that we're dealing and always with good people, and whatever, to Jack's point, if we can't get, it's not just about the deal. And I think that, again, like you had mentioned, why you're here is very much because there's a philosophical alignment. It's not just a matter of, hey, you've given us business and we want to give you a platform. That's obviously a very big portion of it too, but more important for us, it's about you, your experience, and who you are as a person. So again, just really can't thank you enough for taking the time.
And look, I appreciate that. And look, know that it hasn't always felt collaborative. I sought out markets and I would go attend them because I was like, how are they? So I saw them as collaborative, or more so collaborative than, you know, my home market. And as a RIA owner, I really felt there's a difference between just running. This is always talked about being transactional, being relational. There's a big difference between just running a meetup or feeling ownership of how to guide your community. Obviously, there's only so much impact that I can do with people, right? But the goal here is, hey, how can I, by design, help my community, you know, become deal makers, take action, be collaborative, learn through more than one modem, right? Like some people just don't do well listening to teachers. So the game night has been fantastic because some people come and they're like, man, I had a woman who was coming for meetings for years. And after that first game night, she went and bought her first rental property because like something finally clicked, right? So know that like none of us have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to be a good imitator, right? Like go find good people worth imitating and go be willing to go spend money, go learn what that looks like. So like I would spend money to go down. Some of my mentors are down in Tampa, and I felt that was super collaborative market. And when I wanted to learn how to do the exchange meeting, I went down there and for like a week, and I attended like 12 meetings in 1 week. It was a freaking marathon. Like I was exhausted, like 12 investor meetings, like multiple meetings a day type of thing. But I did it because I was like, what are they doing that I can take home with me?
Of course.
Totally. Absolutely.
Well, Court, like I said, I know we've taken a good, you know, close to an hour of your time here. We'll certainly let you get going, but just can't thank you enough for everything that you've done for us, for me personally, and really looking forward to, more than anything, you know, continuing this relationship, growing it again. And I'll be down in September, so I hope to see you then. But before we let you go, was there anything that you had going on or wanted to promote or present or mention here?
Yeah. Any plugs? Get them in now. We'll let them all fly,
and we'll make sure to clip it. Yep.
Well, no, thank you guys. Look, it was an honor chatting with y'all. I would say the best way for people to get in touch with me, if you go to Courtney10k.com. So that's Courtney, the number 10, the letter K.com. It actually it's like a link tree. It has like all of my sites. So first of all, if you guys, I'm happy to adopt you into my RIA. Any of the listeners, we actually have a YouTube channel of all the recordings. We started sometime in 2018, so we have a good amount of trainings on there. And no one's selling anything. It's all literally just content based. And I know you guys, you know, at the end of the day, that's been huge. So I've brought on some of my gray-haired mentors on there. The other thing here is, you know, I consider myself a creative real estate investor, and I know with this changing market that literally that's a huge uptick that people are saying. I'm actually literally doing this podcast. I have a lunch thing, and then I'm speaking tonight, and then I'm speaking again on Thursday, and then I'm speaking again in like the next week, where again and again I'm getting out there. speaking on, people want me to come speak on creative financing because I've bought a significant amount of my portfolio through creative financing. So if you guys are interested in stuff like that, feel free, follow me along on Instagram. So if you go to Courtney10k.com, you can check out my Instagram. It's just at Courtney Fricke from there.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. We'll make sure to do that. We'll blast everything out. But like I said, we'll let you go. Thank you so much again, and you have a great rest of your day, okay?